I don't know. The internet's strange.
The internet is strange.
I get it. They're gonna have different opinions, but God, for God's sake, can't you read? If you're gonna read and post things, can you at least read a comment before just continuing to argue? Because literally, like, I was like, where did you get that from? I literally just said this.
The sad, great, destructive thing about the internet is it has created a world where people don't have to think before they speak because there's no repercussions. You can just say whatever you want on the internet. No one's gonna find you. They don't know who you are. You probably don't even live in the same city, same neighborhood. They could call you whatever they want, speak their blind opinions as much as they want, and fear nothing. Like that person, that tried to get into an argument with me on TikTok for my comments. She knew she could say whatever she wanted because some people would agree with her fully, and she knew that would happen. People will find, like people and back her up, and would, in her opinion, in her mind, that would make me feel stupid or back down because, well, look, these people are with me and believe me. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care if I'm the only person in the entire world that shares my opinion on every subject. I'm still going to have that opinion on every subject because I only have opinions that I have developed in my life. I never, ever, and I can say this of myself, I never have just a blind opinion on anything.
That's good.
As soon as someone brings a concept to me or a topic or an argument to me, I listen to it thoroughly first, and then I think on it.
I do have a question.
I never just go, well, I think this. I go, let me think on it.
I have a slight tangent now, a little random, came up earlier, and this, there's a show, and they didn't do it quite right, I just totally agree. There was a show called, Netflix did a Cleopatra thing.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, I didn't even know what happened until the internet just exploded. I was like, what's happening? But I get it, I think they handled it very poorly. But one thing I disliked about when people were yelling, I couldn't have a conversation with anybody because they're like, she was white or she was black, and I said, wasn't she technically olive skinned? And this was weird. Some people said, well, actually, yes, and some people even asked, what's olive skin? I'm like, how do you know? And I said, well, if you look at the down at your local Walgreens, you will see in the makeup section. Like, I was like, how have you not? Anyway,
right.
So someone was like, well, it's European white still, regardless. And I'm like, wait a second.
There's that erasure again.
Right. I'm like, wait a minute. And then I was like, okay, wait a minute. What? I'm like, okay, you're talking about race, but what about nationality? Because I hate how when people talk about Cleopatra, she's like, oh, she was Greek. I'm like, okay, genetically, more likely she was Greek. More than likely, especially because they did a lot into their family and breeding. But she was an Egyptian queen. I'm not talking about race. I'm just talking about nationality.
Right.
And she loved her people. That's why she was such a brilliant queen, because she understood the people. Now, where now? And then I turned to the Latinos. Latinos have so many DNA in them, from slavery to white people coming in to the indigenous, and everything else. That doesn't change the fact that they're Latino. So what about Cleopatra? People seem to not want to add that same logic to Cleopatra. I'm not saying she's white. I'm not saying she's black. Shut up.
Right.
I'm just asking you, technically, especially because where she lived, because they both got a lot of, because the island got a lot of sun, hence why they tan. And then you got generations of the same in Egypt. They had a lot of sun. How do you know she wasn't very dark because of the complexion-wise?
Right.
I'm not talking about genetics. I'm not talking about race.
Right.
I'm just asking for common sense here. So I'm not saying her casting was right or wrong. I'm just saying, how do you know she wasn't very fair or more or less towards fair skin, because she still lived in Egypt?
Right.
What's right or wrong? And then someone mentioned, I didn't know this. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. I didn't know this, but someone said, I just said, thank you for saying, because I didn't know this. But someone said she might have had also a bit of Middle Eastern in her, which backs up the darker skin toned. I'm not saying she's black or white. And here's something, I feel like people don't want to say Egyptians are black. or African, and they're just African. I'm like, you're right, because they're in that sector. And then you got Morocco, you got Ethiopia. Like, a lot of those people corresponded with Middle East because no one gave a damn about continents.
Right.
So when you're talking about, this is
Right.
what I hate about.
We created continents.
Yeah, we created that concept.
Hello.
So why are you trying to blockade something that's completely like been here before, mixed many times due to countries, war, and history? Like, how do you talk about race in that standpoint then, when it doesn't really technically even matter, does it? I'm sorry. Whew. So I try to have a conversation. Like, technically, she was more or less, for the sake of argument, olive skinned at best for a white person, allegedly.
Right.
And she and then people are like, well, no, she was white or European white or da. I'm like, shut the fuck up. And then they're like, oh, she was black and this and that. I'm like, I'm not talking about the show. And I say it like firsthand in the comment too. Hey, I'm talking about generally in history. Wasn't she like? And people still don't read. They just want to yell at you. I just like. I'm
Well,
just
it's
like.
because these are the same people that have panic attacks and become angry when they have their genetics done and see how much of a mix of all kinds of things they are.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend who was black and had their DNA done, and he was, I think, 21% West African, and that was it.
Yeah.
The rest, he was European, he had Hispanic in him, he had a little bit Native American in him, he had Norwegian in him, he had Welsh, he had Irish, he had all this stuff. He was pissed.
Pissed, huh?
Oh.
He felt disgusted?
Wrathful, yes.
Oh, wow.
Could not talk to him about it for days and days because he was just wrathful. And finally I looked at him, took him out for coffee, and I looked at him across the table and I said, I need you to shut the fuck up. Because that does nothing to affect the fact that you are black.
Right.
Socially, you're a black person. Done. That does not affect your blackness. And the idea that your genetics do is stupid.
It is.
And that is a failure on your group, your social group. That in your mind, you have to be a certain percentage of African to be black. Shut the fuck up. It's like me being socially a white person, and I'm a quarter Native American. I am 3 things genetically, and that's it. Irish, Welsh, and Native American.
You got all the best ones.
Meanwhile, my sister is a huge mutt. Mom's a huge mutt. Michael was a huge mutt. More than all of us. And then there's me. Does that affect socially how I identify or feel? Well, I don't identify as white because white is stupid. I hate the whole racial identifications that we've adopted.
Well, then you can't say why it's stupid then, because there's just
years, because it's a stupid concept.
Oh, okay.
That's where I'm at. It's a stupid concept.
Oh.
Number 1, am I the color of paper? Then why do they call me white?
That's something I've always wondered about that concept. I'm like, well, there, you're pink. Because of blood. But yeah.
It can, well, most of the colors that we assign to people, here's the other, and this should be the common sense of culture. We only have 3 colors that we assign. White, black, brown. What do we call Asian people? Asian. What do we call Native American people?
I have never heard of brown, I'm sorry.
Indian or
Yeah.
Native American. What do we call Hispanic people? Hispanic, Latino, Mexican, Hawaiian, Polynesian, blah blah blah, 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 blah blah blah. We have these 3 colors over here. Why? Because historically, those three color names were derogatory.
Oh. So white, black, and
White
brown.
people came from the Native American people.
Oh.
They called these white foreigners.
Oh.
And so it ended up just getting adopted. And we call ourselves white people. And most white people of today don't know where that term actually comes from and knows that it's derogatory and you've adopted it as your color.
Oh.
Black people were called black because it's the opposite of white. It was derogatory.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. I didn't know that.
Derogatory. And yet they call themselves black people. You adopted a derogatory term.
And changed it. I guess.
Why? See, I have so many issues with humanity and race and all that kind of stuff.
No, here's my art
Just like I do
side
with-
coming out, but I just
Gender
feel...
versus sex. I have huge arguments with those. Sex is biology. Gender is something we've created. Dear God.
That's so true.
Dear God.
Dear God.
You are a woman, therefore feminine, cooking, pink, skirts, heels. What about all the women that don't like any of those things? They're not women, according to you in gender. Yeah, they're not women. Does that change the fact that they're female sex? No. This has to do with biology.
By the way, this is my artist side talking. It's okay. My artist side is talking about this, but because before I knew that, I always thought like, okay, because I don't like calling people African American because it's like you're not African. Like, how do I know?
You don't know.
You can come from the Caribbean. You don't. I sometimes ask my people are African. Say they're African American. I'm like, okay, but how do you know you're from Africa directly?
Right.
And they don't know. I'm like, well, anyway, and they're like, well, you can't call us black. And I'm like, okay, then what am I supposed to call you? Help a person out. Help me. What do you want? And like, you call me African American. I'm like, but I feel like that's unfair to both you and me because I don't know and you don't know. And the thing is, it's like, can I just call you American then?
Yeah, because then you can counter argument those people, which I do all the time. And I go, all right, what do you call me? Well, you're a white person. So you can call me white, but I can't call you black. Interesting.
I know, right?
Why don't you call me a white American? Why don't you call me a European American?
Why don't you call me Asian American?
Why don't you call me hello? If you're expecting me to call you this, why don't you call me that in return? You don't, because you actually don't care.
Right.
My
sister, idiot. My sister, the idiot, very much called me acting white growing up because to her I was acting white. I mean, I'm not saying that. I mean, maybe she's correct in the way people assume what is white is, but it's weird. It's weird. Anyway, so yeah, it's damaging.
Hate it.